Okay, there was a reason why I did that. Okay, so I'm gonna go straight in and share where this research is coming from. Okay, actually, before I do that, I just want to say hi, everyone. 17th. We had a quick intro. Hi, Sharita. Beforehand, 17th of September. And it's our bi-weekly session with myself, Bally Binning, and I will pop in there the research as we share, etc. As always. So we're gonna crack on and go into this part of the topic, right? So AI tools, trust and truth. I know, and this is something we've spoken about a few times, and I know a lot of you are using a lot of these tools and looking at various platforms. And what we're going to be talking about is what do we understand to be hallucinations, which tends to happen, and also where this research came from. So let's think about leading smarter. So these AI sessions run every 2 weeks. My name is Bally Benning, founder of Leaderize. My mission here really is bring AI tools, but really remember there's keeping humans in the loop and having that collaborative approach as we grow. Um, um, a lot of you will be using a lot of the AI tools. Some of you perhaps are feeling overwhelmed by the pace of AI, perhaps have encountered an AI that was a little too creative with facts, that's to say the least. Some of you will have perhaps encountered that a few times. The key thing is, when we speak about AI, it's no longer kind of optional. It's in fact imperative. And, to kind of stay at the forefront, it's becoming a competitive edge. I was talking to someone earlier today and they were saying we're inundated with content. There's a lot of noise out there. It's a lot of AI generated content. So there is a lot of that. And the question, I suppose, is it kind of talking to the people that you're trying to speak to? And how do we kind of build that trust component? So as leaders in this space, we've got a lot of coaches, business owners, developers also. When we're thinking of that, just thinking of getting very clear and getting that clarity and then selecting wisely and being critical, right? So before you kind of jump on the wagon. So the key thing is, are you building bespoke AI or discovering off-the-shelf tools? Now, some of you may already be building your AI tools. I know some of you here are. I know Richard most likely is, and others of you may be picking kind of tools are off the shelf. Or when we mean off the shelf, you're kind of going to places like OpenAI, which is GPT, or we're looking at, kind of you might be having, Manus is a tool. Perhaps you're going to DeepSeek, or you're picking up kind of Claude. That might be one, right? So there are many things to pick from. Now, I was, and there are other leaderboards, but the two that might be familiar to most of us here, perhaps not. I'll put the links in, by the way, are places like Hugging Face, versus kind of future tools, AI. So now, when we go to these platforms, are these familiar? Are these new? Are you familiar with these? Is this kind of new to anyone? When I say leaderboard, I'm just going to check. Using. Okay, thanks, Julia. Okay, not familiar. Um,
Hi,
okay.
Bally.
Yeah, hi, hi.
Not familiar as well.
Okay, so this is thanks, Hyatt. So this is new. So what it is, I'll give you the links to these. So when we're some of the tools you will have like picked because you've heard about them through the media, perhaps you read about them. Others, there's a plethora of tools, right? And so it can be really confusing when we're trying to select a tool and we're asking ourselves, what's that tool going to support us with? Now, I'll give you the links, right? So, um, there is there are places where you can go and check, and they function for specific purposes, right? So, if you're a developer, you may be familiar with things like Hugging Face. If you're looking at future tools, AI tools, Richard, you may have other example of leaderboards, but these are the two that I found to be ones that I use. If I'm thinking of like various tools, what's happening in this space, these may be ones. I'll pop these in. Familiar use there, SLM. Okay, so that's Richard with LM Studios. Okay, so these are the ones here. Are these the ones you use, Richard? Are there any others that, I mean, is there something you use, you specifically pick?
I've been using Hugging Face. I'm glad for future tools. I'll check that out. I haven't used it as of to date, but um, yeah, to kind of use it in conjunction with a kind of a private or local LLM like LM Studio allows you to download, you know, various LLMs, but a local copy of it. This way you have more control. It's not exposed to learning from your data and putting it out there in the public domain. You can actually like download um, Meta's LLM. You can download DeepSeek. You can download many different LLMs. And you can also specify, like I'm doing some work in the legal space. So when I'm using Hugging Face, I'm filtering it by legal small language models so that I can kind of see what they have and see how I can perhaps combine them into LM Studio, because LM Studio does have the ability to prompt multiple small language models in combination.
Yeah,
And some of the more powerful tools can do that for hundreds, if not thousands, of these little mini LLMs that I think they're called small language models as opposed to large language models,
that's
because
right.
they're obviously smaller. In some cases, not all. Obviously, DeepSeek is a large language model, but you can download a local copy if you got 2 gigs on your hard drive and use a product like LM Studio.
Yeah, that's a great point. So if you're looking to have it kind of on your device rather than in the cloud, then you can have these. The things to consider when you're doing that, and that is something to be thinking about, or even create your own eventually. That way you manage it, and you could have something like GPT, essentially with your material, which you then share with people, then it becomes yours as opposed to kind of going into these large language models or LLMs, right? A little bit, I think maybe it's a little bit too much because this may have, there's a lot to think about when we're creating any tools, we're building them. And I'm going to go through a few of these. So Hugging Face tends to be kind of built or deployed for deep tech or and future tools when you've got so many different tools. Now, I always say it's not about quantity, it's about the use of a tool. What's its function? What are you going to be using the tool for? We're seeing a lot of these available now, and people are questioning which one do I go for, which one do I pick. So just in a sort of just that link, Hugging Face, it's used for building workbenches. So if we're thinking of development, training, deployment, so who would be the audience? So it may be yourselves actually. You may decide actually this is something I want to learn, I want to go down this route. You can do that. You may get someone to sort of support you in helping with putting that together. Thinking about watch points, thinking about governance is something really top of list, I know, for Richard here, for others too. I know Ivan's talked about it as well. So it can be complex. We've just talked about some of those tools. So it sounds like we can just plug and play. It's not always the case. It's understanding how we plug and play and would it slow down the machine? Which model shall I use? And we're all familiar with the sort of the popular ones like GPTs. Future Tools, I came across a few years back, and it has grown. And Dana, thank you for that. Sort of, this is one that's got all the kind of tools that some have come and gone. Actually, that's always interesting because if I'm picking any tool, I'll mention this is what support's available. Because at least with the bigger models that we've got some of the back end support, with the open sources, that's always a question, right? What support's available? So when you're looking at future tools, Explorer's Guide created a list of tool, basically it's a list of tool directory. And so most of us would go in there. Perhaps we're looking at a tool that we may apply, use. There's a lot of hype, and so I kind of put out fillers. And when we're picking tools, if you're like anything like me, a few years back, I kind of tested quite a lot of these. I just wanted to see what was, there. A lot of them, like I said, have come and gone. Some that I haven't used for a while, like HeyGen, are doing some remarkable things now. 11 Labs. They've just shifted, I mean, what they're able to do compared to what they would when they were first released, it's phenomenal. Even then, I thought they were great, but um, but when have you used a directed find brilliant tools or felt lost in the noise? I know most of us probably here do feel a little bit overwhelmed when we're looking at kind of tools. This is why I think having a place like this where we can ask questions and compare and look at what's working and perhaps things to look out for. So if you were comparing like which link, I always like to do this if you think so, Hugging Face might for building customization. Um, and there are YouTube, you can find YouTube videos on how you may be able to customize your own, but we do it, there's a little bit of guidance that's needed, right? And steps. If you're like me, you might want steps, implementing these and creating your own LMs. Technical know-how can be a little bit complex. Someone that knows how always say, oh, yeah, it's easy to do, but if you're new to this space, it may not be that straightforward. So, future tools, discover, integrate, business creative selection can be overwhelming. Pick wisely. Um, so what we're going to be thinking about is thinking about how best case scenarios. I just came up with this scenario with this woman here, Zara. So she's ambitious entrepreneur launching an artisanal coffee subscription box. So what would she be thinking about if she's kind of doing that? So of course, anything we're going to be doing is all case-based scenario, right? So thinking about what tools are going to be at hand. So she may dive into some of the future tools. She may sort of come and attend sessions like this, thinking about which ones she's going to start with, right? Because it can be overwhelming. Most people would say, yeah, why don't I just go to GPT or GPT-5 or Claude? And that seems to be kind of a go-to for most people. But, thinking beyond that, if you're thinking of service chatbots, right? Some of you may already have those, or you're thinking of email marketing campaigns. So she wants to have things that are going to be easy, quick, and easy to integrate. So she'll pick out sort of three key tools. And again, we can go through some of these. If any of you are looking at doing something like that, we can kind of walk through some of what those tools might look like. And then when you're scaling, you may go then to places like Hugging Face. Um, so then she may hire an expert to help her do that. So I suppose my message with this is rather than trying to do it yourself, think about which of the tools that you're going to be utilizing as opposed to trying them all out when you're running a business, trying to think of which best case scenarios. And most of you have already done that, but I think it's always we can fall into the trap of having so many to pick from and not thinking which ones shall I decide on. That tends to be kind of an issue. Before I go on to the blue chip AIs, Should we just check which of the tools people are using at the moment? So I'm just going to, Dana's, you mentioned Hugging Face is a GitHub for AI models platform where developers share and download pre-trained AI models. Instead of building from scratch, they make money hosting and providing enterprise AI services. Basically, it's Center Hub. Yeah, it is a central hub, Dana. And the good thing about GitHub is some of you will have sort of, and you've got and it's brilliant because you've got codes which people can share. Of course, there are ways to kind of make those slightly private for yourselves as well. I've seen that done too. Which are the ones that you're using? Feel free to share. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe there's something here. Maybe using most of us, I'd assume, are using GPT or Claude. I know, Richard, I saw you using Manus the other day, which is one of my go-to as well. Jenny using ChatGPT, Kathy's using GPT, and so some of you may have already created your own GPTs, kind of utilizing those, and Claude. So using GPT and Claude. The other ones, Perplexity, Gemini, own preset GPT. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so that's always good thing to do. So for those who haven't sort of been following us, we created GPTs that we can evoke when we're having conversations with in GPT environments. So you can create your own bespoke GPTs, and that way, you're bringing in that GPT for that assigned task. Often helps. Grok, yeah, Grok's good for yeah, Grok's great. Quen, some of you will have been using. Um, Richard, yeah, Nano, absolutely. That's the one we were talking about the other day. And the one that you haven't mentioned, which I may have missed, did somebody mention that? Is Notebook LM.
Yes.
Yay! I'm like, we were talking about that a few weeks ago. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, somebody, oh,
Great.
you did, Ivan said it. Okay, Notebook LM is one. Okay, yes, yeah. If you go into Notebook LM, you'll start seeing that they've actually expanded that and they've got capacity now to create lessons, etc. So I was testing that out. So they've got a little bit more happening in that space. Um, so a lot of these, most of us are familiar with, right? Some of these, it might even looking at that might seem a lot, right? When we're thinking which ones do we pick, right? Um, any kind of suggestions? What would be your two tips before I move on to uh,
Yeah.
our research on hallucinations? Ivan. Okay, Richard, do you want to go
Uh,
first? Yeah, Ivan doesn't.
uh, just real quick, I think probably one of the quickest things that saved me a lot of time is actually coming to a group like this because you can share of collective experience and actually make some summations real quick, which I find very useful. Notepad LM, I have to say, ticks the box. GPT is cool, as a research tool, but I find Notepad actually very useful for many different things. I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. Richard, did you?
Yeah, I would just kind of, it is overwhelming. And I'm on all these Instagram chats where they send you the top 20 tools. And I kind of just eyeball it, to try to understand which ones. But sometimes you just have to work in reverse. You really want to be versed on what's coming out. And the thing with AI is that it's not like software where Microsoft is the only game in town or Google is the only browser or search engine. In AI, you have competitive products that are always leapfrogging over each other, depending on the timing. For example, everyone was going gaga over ChatGPT 5's new capability to create images. Well, that wasn't until Nano Banana came along. And now with HeyGen, with its latest release, you can take an image from Nano Banana, bring it into HeyGen, create a script in ChatGPT, and create a 30-second video with that image that's actually now talking reasonably well in terms of the lips moving, with the words, kind of like the comfortably numb song. So yeah, and I belong to a bunch of newsletters, and sometimes those are a good way just to kind of peruse what's coming up. But you look at all of these things and you have to be careful about shiny object syndrome. So what you always want to be mindful of is, okay, I've just spent some time in HeyGen, and yeah, it's great. It can create videos. It's great for, creating content, for creating, uh, training materials or SOPs and all these kind of things. But does that really apply to me? So you got to kind of look at all these things and say, how does it apply in my business? Can I use it in my business? If the answer is no, it's just thank you very much, park it somewhere and come back to it if and when you do need it. So that's kind of what I try to keep in mind because yeah, you'll go nuts trying to keep up with the latest.
Yeah.
And again, 1 week ChatGPT surges past Claude, but then Claude catches up. That's a lot to kind of try to keep up with and manage, but you almost have to, because when a VO3 or or any of these products, HeyGen comes up, or 11 Labs, when they move the needle so far that we need to pay attention to it, it's worth our time and effort to be mindful of and aware of that. However, it always comes back to, how do I use this in my business? Does it apply to me? If I'm not doing video content, don't spend your time in HeyGen. Um, you know, Prime example, but always think about your personal use case and how it can elevate you. If not, put it aside. Don't get distracted.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion because it is easy. If you're a creator, you're wanting to explore, you're wanting to innovate, you're wanting to try that tool out, and we can lose time. And essentially, what is it that we're trying, with our business, who we're targeting, and how we're getting to them, and how do we consume content ourselves, right? So having a place like this where we can share because we're spending a little bit of time on it, but at least then you can say, actually, this is not for me. I'll come back to it. It's thank you, but not
But
now. As you said, park it for now and come back to what you need.
yeah, and there's a couple of fundamental leaps that we're all looking for, and that is being able to create an avatar of ourselves that looks and sounds and uses our language and our knowledge base, and actually the lips move pretty well to a full screen image. Right now, that's not there. You can shrink it down to a smaller version, and it works really well if you've got, an image, B-roll image or something in the background. But that's probably not going to happen until next year when we can create an avatar of ourselves that will essentially be able to do social posts or whatever it is that we want. You still want to inform people that, hey, you're talking to AI, but it'll be almost imperceptible. So there are a couple of things that you probably want to be mindful of and kind of just ignore all the other stuff that's going on. But again, the challenge is different products will leapfrog over each other. So you kind of have to, you know, test some of those products, but always within the concept of, is this useful for me?
Absolutely. The lip syncing is amazing because we don't even spot it on some of the very quick
Yeah.
TikTok videos. We're not seeing it. They
Mhm.
pass by so quickly, you know. Okay, so the research, I'm going to come on to this. I'll share the research
One
with you.
one other
You're going to
product
say
I wanted
something. Go ahead, Richard.
sorry, one other product I wanted to throw out, and that's Delphi's clone, which is really a great enhancement for us to use in many different ways. Um, and we
Yeah,
could probably do a session on that at some
actually,
point, or
yeah,
maybe.
that actually that's a great point. Yeah, that let's do that. I know we want to do another session on automation. So yeah, Delphi would be a good one for us to speak about. Great call. So big names, we hear blue chip blind spots as well. Some of us kind of get caught up in some of those expenses. But it's competitive, right? So these companies are kind of leading the way as we're seeing, right? So However, this is based on some research that came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's a great paper, and I'm happy to. I'll share that with you. I can share it via email as well. I know, Richard, you said you haven't got too long. So the question with hallucinations, most of us, I'm sure, have had examples of this, and we're thinking, well, what is going on? That, when I was reading or going through this paper, it's a little bit like when we have these AI models. It's when you go to say we're doing an exam, high stakes exam, and this is what they mention in the research, is that the students that will pick, say, at least pick, some multiple choice, and they pick one based on rather than saying I don't know it and leaving it blank and not responding to that exam question, they get possibly marks for it. But however, if the model says, well, I don't know, models are trained actually to guess, right? They go with, we've spoken about this, right? The pre-trained, they're pre-trained, and we've all seen this. They come with their flaws, and that's popping up, sorry. So if we've got about 9 minutes or so, and like I said, we'll come into Q&A afterwards. So you've got flawed data. The training can be imperfect. We've seen examples of that. There are fundamental kind of limitations as well, and it's baked in, it's the way it's created. So if there's something that's I mean, a lot of it is, it's really good. I mean, most of us experience kind of amazing things with it. However, you're going to see examples where they use examples of a PhD student where they had a question and they gave it to three different models. It's actually worth reading that paper if you're anything like me that wants to kind of inquire about these things, where the models gave different responses, right? Hyatt here, actually, Hyatt, you had this with your students that claimed, and this was an interesting example, if you're okay with me sharing this, that your students actually said that you'd written a paper and you hadn't written that paper. They were citing you, right?
Exactly. And it even had a die number and everything, and it was not mine. Indeed.
And it wasn't yours, it wasn't like your paper, which is really interesting. So they made up their lecturer's academic paper. It was like part of and that was made out. Was that GPT? Was that kind of, did they say hi? Is that what they used? Were they using GPT? Hyatt?
Yes, they use it in GPT. Yes, yeah.
Okay, okay.
It's GPT.
Yeah, so it's again, when we're thinking about these models, so it becomes a bit like I mentioned, that test taker incentivized to bluff, right? Because when we're looking at these leaderboards, right, and the way they are kind of competing against each other, the ones that, of course, they are kind of rewarded, if you like, for putting those, if you like, those good guesses, the best case scenarios out there, and they're rewarded for that, right? Which is really interesting. So, is that something have you noticed that as well? Is that somebody
Well,
was,
I was just going to comment before I split. You brought up, hallucinations are a real thing, and it's because large language models are designed to hallucinate. They're designed to take, our prompt, merge that with their own internal prompt, and give us back what it thinks we want to see, not what's fact-based, not what's actually attributed, verified information. So what I typically do is I go back to it and say, one, you can use a RAG. You talked about different variations. Like Perplexity is really good because it's a RAG, which is an intermediary that sits between you and the large language models that it may access, and it may access several of them concurrently. And what it does is it comes back with a kind of a composite of all the data sources, but it attributes them. It gives you, where that information came from. But within a large language model like a ChatGPT or even a Claude or any of them for that matter, even Perplexity, you still have to, what I do is I ask it to tell me where it's hallucinating. Give me on a scale of 1 to 10 what the reliability factor is of the information. And then I see if I see an 8 out of 10, I say, okay, you need to go back and rerun this analysis, eliminating any fabrication, hallucination, made up information, stick to fact-based, attributed, reliable sources and cite them so that what I'm getting, my eventual output, I know is rock solid. And then ask it again, rate this on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of the reliability factor of the material. And then, just tell it, I need a 10 out of 10. I need absolute fact-based, verified, valid information. And then that it'll clean it up for you. The beauty of ChatGPT is if you tell it what you want and ask it how to prompt what you want, it will tell you. And then that's what you need to do as an exercise in an ongoing fashion. That's really the only way you can have it clean up your hallucinations.
Yeah, it's a great insight. Thank you for that. And don't believe what it kind of, what it sort of spits out, if you like, and absolutely make it work. It likes doing the work, and it kind of goes away and does the stuff for you. And so, like I said, I'll share this. It does go into kind of mathematical kind of, research, but it's really in depth. So, yeah, it's absolutely, I think that's a great strategy because it's like anything we're using, we want to kind of get the reliable kind of information the best we can. Hallucinations design feature, not a temporary glitch to be fixed, risk legal, financial, reputational, real consequences, say for ourselves in organizations. And then I love that where you actually getting it, you're asking it to rate its performance and outputs, and then asking it to go and do its work, and then coming back with giving the credible sources, and you could even go further and say, well, actually, cite the sources that it cited, and where did those sources come from? I mean, you could actually go down a bit of a rabbit hole, but it might be a good one if you're kind of using that as
No.
part of research. So that
And
essential. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead, Richard.
I'm sorry to interrupt because I do have to run, but even if you're doing deep research, use the same approach because deep research, I know there was something circulated recently that said even Manus hallucinates. So if you're doing deep research, it's great because it's designed to, access information on an incredibly deep level and really think immensely on its output, but it can still hallucinate. So you have to remind it whether it's Manus perplexity or whatever deep research you're using.
Yeah, it's a
Follow
great.
the same path.
Thank you, Richard. That's a great point because we think deep research, it's kind of, it's the name. It can be a little bit deceiving. You're thinking, well, actually, it's deep research, so it's got to do the thing it says. Not necessarily. So it's a great that's a great point. So in this space, we will use the same link as I was mentioning, to rejoin, and we won't record the second part, but just for the purpose of this, just to say path forward is to trust and verify. So think of like AI when we're thinking of development, better evaluation, look at confidence scores that we've just mentioned. Leaders integrate validation, be critical. It gets rewarded for things will change. I think these leaderboards hopefully will have some way incentivizing when it doesn't know and goes away and does work. It's not quite there yet. But when we're building it into our organizations, we're building it in as as professionals. Think about our own culture of those working and those we actually get on board to support us, and be a little bit skeptical. Healthy questioning of AI outputs is great way forward. These tools are here, they're here to stay, and it's like one practical step you can take tomorrow to enhance AI validation. I'm sure you'll take away things that perhaps Richard's mentioned here, or others have shared in the chat if I missed them. Um, just to double check what others are saying. That's okay, Richard. Yeah. So, as leaders, smart leaders, don't just adopt AI. We understand it, when to trust it, but actually test it, and tailor it for our purposes. We've got a few more moments in this session in these few minutes before we go back into this we'll use the same link for Q&A. And if you've got those questions, bring those questions with you. And so we'll use the same link, because it will be good to kind of hear in that forum. And sorry, we're using my kind of temporary Zoom chat for these few sessions while I work out whether I go into an AI virtual space for these sessions. I haven't quite decided that. Yeah, so like I said, we'll go back into the same link and we'll come and I won't record that part. So hopefully you've got some shares, you've got some questions when we rejoin using the same link in a few moments that you might say, actually, this is what I found. And I can actually share the paper with you immediately, where this research came from. So I'll see you in a few moments in the same room, same link in a tick. Okay.